We are creating a platform for those who are curious, one that tells the story from the artist's perspective. Moments in time captured from the innovators who are reshaping dance, music, theater, and the visual arts. This is the Working Artist Project.
I think the first thing I learned when I started playing Herlin's band regularly is that sometimes simplicity is the best thing. You know, what I also learned from Herlin is that ultimately the most important thing you could do on the bandstand is have fun and make sure that the audience is having fun. You know, so it's like that's something that I also try to achieve in my own band, in my own way though, you know.
Today on the Working Artist Project, I have the one and only Jasen Weaver. Jasen is a bass player that hails from the city of New Orleans, one of the greatest musical cities in the world, quite frankly. Jasen has performed and is currently playing with Donald Harrison, Herlin Riley, Jasen Marsalis, Ellis Marsalis, Delfeayo Marsalis, just to name a few. I had the privilege to talk to Jasen about his newly released record, Voscoville. We also touched on his inspirations for creating music, his inspirations for writing music, what it's like to be a band leader versus being a sideman, growing up in New Orleans, living in New Orleans currently. And man, we got into so much stuff, just cultural identity and what it's like to be a musician in 2018. I know you guys are going to enjoy this episode of the Working Artist Project. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Today's guest is none other than the one and only Jasen Weaver. Welcome to the Working Artist Project.
Hey, what's up, man? Hey, thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, man. So, I want to start just by getting your story, man. You know, for all of those who don't know you, like, what is the story of Jasen Weaver?
Okay. Well, I started playing bass when I was 11. I started playing at a local string orchestra project. Well, it was a program for kids. It was called the New Orleans String Project. So that's where I started playing the upright bass. I've always played bass from the beginning. From there, you know, I was doing string orchestra in middle school, and I joined the jazz band, which was my first exposure to jazz. We were playing in the big band. We were trying to get ready for the essentially Ellington competition, which I'm not sure if we actually entered that competition, but we were working on some dudes. I think one of the first charts they put in front of me actually was this one called Jack the Bear, which is like one of Jimmy Blanton's famous pieces that I definitely could not play. But it made me like real curious about the music, because I thought it was amazing, even though I couldn't do it. So after that, I started doing more jazz programs. I did the Louis Satchmo Armstrong Jazz Camp. And then I started going to the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts, where I attended high school. I started playing professionally after I graduated. I had a few gigs before I graduated high school, but really, I feel like my first real professional call was when I was 18. And I just graduated from high school, and Delfeayo Marsalis called me randomly. I had not met Delfeayo. And he called me to play at this little place called the Old Point Bar on the West Bank every Saturday. So that's kind of when I feel like, you know, my professional career really started. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, you know, that's a short version. That's a short version of my story.
All right, if y'all want the long version, let me give you Jasen's phone number. It'll be in the link. So you.
Whoa.
No, man, but you mentioned you got your own band, and I want to get into that right away. You just released your first record as a leader.
Yeah, man.
It's called Voscoville, right?
That's right. Yeah, I released the record on March 2nd, and we had our album release party down here at Snug Harbor last week on March 1st. So the record is out. I've been working on getting this record out since 2016, and it's finally available. So please go check it out.
So what was the inspiration for this record? What, like, I want to get into it. Like, what does Voscoville mean?
Okay, so the Voscoville is the name of the neighborhood that I grew up in. So it's kind of like a sub neighborhood because the overarching neighborhood is called Gentilly in New Orleans.
Okay.
That's where I'm from. But within that neighborhood, there are several other little smaller neighborhoods, and the Voscoville is one of them. You know, that's where my mom's side of the family is from. And our family house is still there. We've been living in the same house on Parker Street back there for over 50 years.
Wow.
So my grandparents lived in that house, and they own that house, and now my mom lives in that house and owns that house. But also my aunt Deborah lives in the Voscoville. I have cousins that live around the corner from us. My great aunt Audrey lives around the corner from us. You know, I got family all back there. You know, just kind of wanted to rep my hood a little bit. You know, and that's the meaning behind the title.
No, I like that. Yeah, like, so on this record though, what kind of inspired, you know, other than your neighborhood, the individual songs? You start out with the Resilient, right?
The titles usually come later for me. I normally just write. Like, I'm having a similar problem now because I'm kind of a streaky writer in that way. So like I write a bunch of stuff at once. Sometimes the tunes on the Voscoville kind of came from like different periods in my life. You know, like there was just like maybe one or two songs here, and then a couple of years later, two songs from that period. The Resilient in particular, like you mentioned, I wrote that when I first started the band. I didn't really have an opener for the set, you know, and I wanted to come out burning. I knew that, and I wanted to be exciting. So yeah, I mean, I sat down and wrote that song. The title came probably a couple months after that. You just mentioned like you write songs based on what's happening in your life at the moment. Like, what are some of those things that are kind of inspiring you? Like, you know, I mean, that you're going through, that you're pulling from? It could be anything, man. The second song on the album is called Ordinance, and when I wrote that, it was kind of there was like an interesting situation going on in New Orleans in terms of like how musicians were being treated in the places where they play music. So basically, we have a lot of people from out of town that will move into the French Quarter and then will start to complain about how loud it was. But that's like really part of the culture here, you know? So they were enforcing a sound ordinance at that time. Like literally, at one point, there were police officers on Frenchman Street with decibel guns.
Oh my God.
Like measuring how loud stuff was in New Orleans, you know?
For people who don't know, like Frenchman Street is just a street with nothing but clubs. You know, it's a music venue in every door. So there's music coming out of every door. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, it was so wild, you know. So, I mean, I didn't set out to write a song about that. I just wrote that song during that time.
Okay.
You know, and the mood of the song kind of fit the struggle of that whole situation to me, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, like a lot of times it happens like that. You know, I'll go back and think about what was happening when I wrote it, or maybe something that happened after I wrote that song that kind of evokes that feeling.
Right.
And then I'll come up with a title.
Man, also, like, you know, what's dope about you is like, and a lot of other my friends who decided to stay in New Orleans, is like you decided to develop your craft at home when so many jazz musicians in particular don't have that option. You know what I mean? So like, what led you down that path, and what do you have to say? Like, can you give some advice to maybe a guy in Oklahoma, maybe trying to create a scene so that he doesn't have to leave home and come to New Orleans or New York or Chicago?
Well, man. So, I mean, what inspired me, I think, to even start a band, and particularly a quintet, man. I had heard some of Nicholas Payton's records from the '90s. When he had that quintet with Tim Warfield and Anthony Wanzi and Adonis Rose.
Yep.
And Reuben Rogers.
Yep. Yep.
But what I didn't realize, man, until I heard some recordings that a good friend of mine had made at that club I mentioned earlier, Snug Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that they were doing a lot of that in New Orleans.
Right.
And it wasn't just Nicholas's group too. During that time, there were just like so many amazing artists in the city. Like Peter Martin was around, and Bryce Winston was around, and so many others that were like really pushing the boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to start a band to try to reach that kind of level of musicianship.
Right.
Because it was just so, like, the first time I heard it, I remember it too. I was listening to a recording of them playing one of Anthony Wanzi's tunes called Blacker Black's Revenge.
Okay.
And man, it was just so killing. That was, and it was live, and people were going crazy in the club. I was like, man, like, okay, that's what I want to do.
Yeah. So
what happened, I graduated from college, and I kind of had a couple of months where I sort of took a break. And, I was just kind of chilling, but I was like, man, okay, I want to really get something going. So I started my own band.
Mm-hmm.
And within a couple of months of doing that, I got offered a weekly gig at this place I used to play at a lot called Bacchanal Wine in the Bywater.
Right.
I played there a couple of times with my band, and then the owner approached me and was really impressed with us, and he wanted us to continue playing on a weekly basis. So I was all for it. I was like, wow, okay, word. And I have a weekly gig now. Right. And what's special about that place is that they let you do whatever you want. Like they want you to play your original music. Right. Right. They want you to come up with your own arrangements. They want you to be pushing the boundary. I was like, man, this is the perfect situation to really learn some music. Mm-hmm. And to really explore some music. So what I did, I had some arrangements and I had some idea of what I wanted to play. So the first year was kind of me like trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to write, I knew I wanted to arrange, but I didn't have the skill set yet to really accomplish what I was going for. So I just started studying and transcribing a lot, And at first I was transcribing things I thought I should transcribe, but after a while it started to feel like homework. Right. And I didn't like that. I wanted to be having fun doing what I was doing. So I started transcribing things that I just naturally gravitated towards. So one of the first projects I did like this, I sat down and I transcribed a bunch of music from this anime cartoon show called Gundam Wing.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so, it was like sort of random. It wasn't random for me, but like if you think about what I was doing, it's kind of random. But, by doing that, it opened up my arranging skills. I had and my transcribing skills, because it's like very detailed parts, and it's not written for quintet, especially a jazz quintet. And most of the stuff is like real heavy rock, or like some of it's even like straight up classical music. Right. So it made me be really creative with my arrangements. So by doing that, I kind of started to develop my own style. So, I say all that to say, if I were talking to somebody that was in a small town like that, I would say, one, if you can, try to get, a weekly or bi-monthly gig where you can have a regular place to play, music. And then when you do that, don't get trapped into playing the same material for too long. Right. Yep. Because you want to keep the growth going. And for me, the way of doing that was to continue to transcribe and learn more arrangements. So like after I did that, started studying composers that I like. So we did a lot of Morgan Miller's music. We did, a lot of Stephon Harris's music. We did some Cedar Walton stuff. We did a lot of Wayne Shorter from that album, The Soothsayer.
Yep.
I had some help too. There were a couple of cats that were giving me records that they thought I should check out. Mm-hmm. So, I would sit down and figure out which ones I liked, and then I would learn that stuff.
It sounds like, man, you really just got in the shed with the whole situation. Like, you got in the shed with the band to play a lot of music, and you got in the shed to like develop your skill set. So I think cats have to realize like it takes time and it's a process no matter where you live. And sometimes it's better if you live in a place where you can have the space to figure it out.
Yeah, man. I mean, we made the record after we had already been playing together for almost 4 years,
Wow.
It wasn't like an overnight process. It really took a long time to develop the sound,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. It definitely takes a lot of time.
I want to talk about like being a band leader versus being a sideman. You know what I mean? And so maybe people don't really understand, like for musicians though, like there's one chair, there's a band leading chair, which is the chair you're sitting in now. And then as a rhythm section player, usually we're in the sideman category, right?
Right.
So like, how would you say those two things compare, and what are the differences, and what have you learned from sitting in both chairs now?
Well, I would say, so I mean, of course, the most obvious difference between being a band leader and a sideman is that when you're leading, you have the final say. Mm-hmm. I think as a sideman, what's important about doing that and being part of that process is that you learn like what the band leader wants and how to provide that to them. And you do that by being in a lot of different situations. So, before I even thought about leading the band, man, I played so many gigs as a sideman, and just observing band leaders that I really liked and respected and how they ran their bands. I think as a band leader too, though, you have to be willing to evolve and change. When I first started the band, I think I was probably a little too strict
mm-hmm.
about what I wanted from my sidemen. And I'm sorry if you talk to any of them, they could tell you. Sometimes I would get upset because of something that was played or something, how something felt or something like that. That was very early on. Now I'm at a stage where like I'm really doing my best to just trust their judgment, right. Even if something doesn't necessarily go the way I want it to go.
Right.
Knowing that and it's like a respect thing too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I respect them. And I know them, we've been playing together for so long that I trust that they won't lead me astray.
Right.
So whatever they play, now I try to say as little as I can and just let them express themselves. I think it's still part of the process, because if I didn't go through the period where I was saying a lot, then maybe we wouldn't have gotten to the sound that we're able to access now.
Right. So
it's a real give and take. You have to. I just feel like you have to constantly be open, and maybe sometimes not. It's very hard to explain it without experiencing it. Like I would say, do both.
I think we're in an interesting situation now with the internet and like instant gratification, where people come out of school and immediately they're like, I'm going to be a band leader, right? And but you can't do a job without experience. So it's like you don't even know how to lead a band. So if you're in a band or you're attempting to be a band leader and you're 21, 22, 23, take some time, like Jasen just said, to be in someone else's band. Be in 50 other people's bands so you can learn, the good and the bad. You know what I mean? Because it just makes things easier going forward. Like, it's okay. Like, you have plenty of time to be and do your own thing, being in all types of different situations, the good and the bad.
I know, man. Yeah, I feel you. Because you never know when you're going to use what you learned in that situation. You never know when you're going to use it, but more times than not, something will come up and you'll be like, you know what, I'm ready for that because I experienced that already.
Right.
I was on such and such a gig, this happened, and I remember what I didn't do right. Now I'm a fix it.
Right.
Or I remember what worked, and I'm gonna do that again. It's experience is priceless, man.
The whole thing is a process, man. Earlier, you mentioned You mentioned almost everybody on my list, but I want to talk about some of the people that you have had the opportunity to play with. And I want to start with somebody we both had an opportunity to play with together. And that's Jasen Marsalis. And I just want to know what you've learned from each person that we talk about, and maybe kind of tell some stories that, you know, that go with those lessons or not.
Well, you know, I think from Jasen, man, I think I learned that sometimes being specific is very important about, you know, what you want in your music. Because Jasen's the type of guy that knows what he wants. Mm-hmm. Also, though, I mean, I think the most important thing I learned in Jasen's band is that any kind of music is game when it comes to playing swing.
Yep.
You know, you can take anything, literally anything, and apply it if you take time to think about it and figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
We both seen him so many times. It's like take the wildest tune. Like I've seen him play this Chicoria tune called "The Game Maker" as a trad tune. right. Like I was like, I don't understand how that worked, but it makes sense that he would be able to make this work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's like the master at proving what Duke said. You know, it's only two types of music, good and bad. You know.
Yeah, no doubt.
So next on the list, we got the one and only Herlin Riley.
I think the first thing I learned when I started playing Herlin's band regularly is that sometimes simplicity is the best thing, especially as a bassist. You know, sometimes you don't have to play too much to really get the feeling of the tune. You know, what I also learned from Herlin is that ultimately the most important thing you could do on a bandstand is have fun and make sure that the audience is having fun.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing about playing with Herlin, like, you know, you could look out in the audience and people are smiling, you know,
right.
And people are having a good time. Like, you know, every time I play with him, it's always the same. He just knows how to bring joy out of people. Mm-hmm. So it's like that's something that I also try to achieve in my own band, in my own way, though.
Exactly. What about Donald Harrison?
I think the most important lesson so far I've learned from him is that the study and the dedication to the craft, it never ends, man. Because that's who he is. He's constantly studying, man. He's always it's never ending, and the amount of information, the amount of music that he knows, it's incredible, man. And he's played with so many different masters in each of the respective genres, whether it's jazz, whether it's R&B, whether it's Latin music. I mean, it's just, you know, classical music. You know, I played a gig with him last year where, you know, he had wrote two movements for an orchestra. Like he wrote it all.
Wow, that's
incredible, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it keeps me in the shed just being around him because, and it's always been like that. You know, Donald was one of my mentors when I was in high school. You know, and yeah, it was like that then, and it hasn't changed. Yeah, he really is incredible, man.
Yeah, man. See, like those stories that, you know, it's important for people to know, like, you know, for anyone to achieve a certain amount of success, then you have to learn from someone, you know, and you've been in a position to learn from those are just three masters, and there's many more people that I'm sure you've had great experiences with that we just don't have time to mention everyone, you know, but those were some heavy things that you just said there. What I want to talk about next is kind of like your vision for your life, man. And this is kind of heavy also. But I'm trying to do some research on all my guests and just trying to see if people have this common theme or not. And I'm just wondering if you had a vision for your life, like, you know, or are you the type of person that's just kind of letting it happen as it goes along?
Mm-hmm. I'm sort of like everybody else. You know, I've had phases in my life where I've been like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But man, you know, you never know what to expect from life. You know, what kind of experiences you might have. You know, I'm at a point right now, I honestly don't know at the moment. I mean, like, of course, I know music will always be a part of my life. And I mean, like, professionally, I have some goals, you know.
Right, of course.
Of course, in my other parts of my life, I also have goals, but I'm trying to be a little flexible, you know, a little more flexible in the past. Like, I'm just some honestly, like I'm trying to take more time off,
Mm-hmm.
like just to enjoy things, to actually take a vacation every now and then,
Yep.
and go experience the world. Like, of course, we all have to work hard all the time, but I feel like I'm learning, for me personally, like I need that time away from music sometimes.
Yeah.
Just to kind of decompress and just enjoy what's happening around me in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it was hard to to really enjoy the moment.
Mm.
Of what I was doing, because I was always thinking about what's next.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think right now, in my life at this moment, I'm trying to learn how to enjoy what's happening around me, now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's deep, man. I remember.
But of course, I'm looking to the future.
Yeah, of course. It's a balancing act, right? Yeah, I always think about when people talk about being in the moment. This thing that Terrence Blanchard said, I heard him say that you have to get out of your own way, and to me, that just means like learning to always totally be in the moment. And the person, another person who inspires me is Brianna Thomas, because Brianna is like the most in the moment human being that I know. Like, shit is crazy. Like, she's like Buddha, man. Like this, she's just like right there in that moment, and it comes across in her music. It comes across when you're having dinner with her. You know what I'm saying? Like everything she does is like totally just about this time that she's spending with you right now, and that's hard to achieve.
Yeah, man. Because there's so much going on in each of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that we have to think about, things that we're worried about, things that we're anticipating to happen, things that we're looking forward to.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta slow down, I think, and just take a breath.
Yeah. Don't worry about that student loan payment, baby.
Maybe for like 10 minutes.
Man, so we coming up on a segment of the show where I call it the word game. Okay. And so what happens is I say a word and you say the first story that comes to your mind after I say that word.
All right, let's do it.
All right, alter ego.
Alter ego. Okay. So yeah, this one, it's a title of one of the tracks on my album, but around that time in my life, I felt like I was a different person when I was on stage versus when I was like just being a human. Wow. For me, this is just part of my journey. Mm-hmm. I think, for me, I was a more confident person on stage because I was more familiar with what was going on. Sometimes when you get on gigs, there's a certain order to it. Right. That can be comforting. Mm-hmm. But once you get off that stage, it's like, it's life. Right. You in it and anything can happen. That's kind of what the meaning of the song is. Like, me being on stage was my alter ego. Maybe it was a part of me that I wish I could accent more in my everyday life. Wow. Yeah. At that time in my life. Yeah. I feel like I'm getting better with that though.
Gumbo.
Oh man. Okay, so yes, yeah, I'm from New Orleans. We eat gumbo, but not like every day. It's not like we eating gumbo for breakfast every morning. I'm just gonna put that out there. But my story about gumbo though, I went to my aunt Donna's house. She was living in New Orleans East at the time with her husband Myron. Man, he cooked this pot of gumbo. It had to be, I think it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I think I ate 3 bowls of gumbo. It was so good, bro. I couldn't stop. It was like I just couldn't stop, man.
Wow, that's funny, man. Okay. I've seen you eat gumbo at least 100 million times. Just saying, y'all.
Yeah, all right, there.
Oh man. Virtuosity.
Oh man, it's hard. It's hard not at like as a bassist when that word comes up. It's hard not to think of Christian McBride. Mm-hmm. Like immediately, I had an opportunity to see him play. I haven't seen him play that much, but he was in Baton Rouge playing a tribute to Ray Brown, actually, with Benny Green and Greg Hutchinson. I got a chance to see him do that, and man, it was just watching him just play this amazing stuff on the bass, man. It was just vocabulary, amazing bass lines, and it looked effortless, and he was doing it with a smile. He was just having fun, man. I just that when that word comes up, I usually think about that show.
Wow,
that was one of the best examples of that I've seen.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's dope, man. Christian is like just phenomenal, you know.
Right.
This is phenomenal. It's like a cat on every instrument that you're just like, wow, dude, should I just stop? Because
like how is he playing Cherokee this fast?
Right. Yeah. Right. It's just crazy, man. So we're coming to the end. I got a few more questions, but I do want to get into. I think it's important to talk about challenges in music and in life, but in changing directions, because sometimes in music, the direction needs to change, or just in your career. And so have you come across that in your life, you know, to this point? And if so, like, how did you kind of navigate that?
You know, well, musically, in terms of direction, it may, you know, like personally, it may have changed, you know, like slightly. I think the biggest change recently, playing in Donald's band, I have to play electric bass, which I hadn't been doing a whole lot. Up until he started calling me. So that's been the biggest shift, I think, in the past year, is having to deal with, it's like really approaching it as a different instrument, because that's how it feels to me.
Right.
But, you know, because of that, though, it's helped me access some different sounds compositionally that I've always been kind of hearing, but never really took the time to kind of make happen. You know, like I started another band that I call Outliers. It's like, you know, I used to do a lot of kind of like music production stuff on the side, like in Logic, in Reason before that I would just do for fun. But I kind of wanted to start playing some of that stuff. And what ended up happening, I started writing new compositions that were kind of based on that style.
Wow, okay.
So like the new band is like, you know, I'm basically playing electric bass the whole time. I have electric guitar, I have saxophone with effects, you know, synthesizers, percussion, and, you know, drums. But yeah, you know, I sometimes the direction changes, but like not for me personally, it hasn't changed that much. I think that's been the biggest shift. That's all. Okay, cool.
Yeah, man. I was also trying to allude to, like, sometimes as a young musician, when you know, did the musical change, but also maybe a band leader will decide not to use you anymore, you know?
I guess. Yeah.
And so, like, when that happens, or maybe you decide not to work with the band leader anymore. You got a gig, you got a band leader that you really like playing with, but then you got this other gig with another band leader who's cool, but they're paying you twice as much. You got these bills to pay.
Right.
What are you gonna do? Like, and how do you make those? How do you make those types of decisions?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm pretty sure we've, you know, every musician, you know, probably has experienced that at some point. And I definitely have. Yeah, there was one band I was touring with pretty heavily for a while, and I'll never forget this. It was a guitarist evangelist in the band, older guy. And he was telling me, you know, we were just talking, and he was like, man, you know, you just got to be prepared, because every gig ends at some point.
Right.
It's just the nature of business. Or, I mean, you know, just like the nature of all things. They come to an end. So you just have to, I would say, like, for me, it was, I always try to have, like, a plan B. I try not to put all my eggs in one basket, just because you never know what might happen, you know?
Yeah.
So you want to be, professionally, I want to make sure that I'm still able to work, even if I'm not doing this one gig that, you know, that's my focus at the time.
Exactly.
So I've had times where I've been fired, but because of that mindset, I've still been able to support myself, because, you know, there's other gigs, maybe that aren't as prestigious, but I can still go and do that in the meantime until something else comes up. But now I'm kind of, you know, right now I'm trying to change that drastically by having my own project. You know, I'm trying to create work for myself. You see?
Yep.
So that way I'm not dependent on the phone ringing, for a gig.
Right. Exactly.
So I can try to create my own work.
There
And,
it is.
it's a hard process, and it's going to take time, even more time than it already has. But that's kind of how I'm preparing for that situation.
Yeah. You heard it here first, folks. And it's free. It's free. You getting this for free, man. This shit is crazy. Man, I'm gonna start charging y'all motherfuckers, man. But no, but for real. Yeah, man, that's great, man. I agree with all of that 100%, man. But this is the end, man. And before we go, though, I do want to ask you one more question. And it's, what are the 3 things that you're most thankful for?
Man, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for my friends in my life. And I'm always thankful for music. Because it's presented me with so many opportunities, and the more you give to it, the more it gives back. So,
yeah, I want to give you an opportunity to plug the CD again, your website, any shows you got coming up, or anything you just want people to know about.
My debut album, The Voscoville, is available now on iTunes. Go listen to it on Spotify. You can go to CD Baby. Whatever digital distribution that you use, it'll be there. My website is www.jasenweaver.com. That's Jasen spelled Jasen. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jasen_Weaver. And my next big gig that's coming up with my band, we're debuting at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival on May 5th at 11:15 a.m. We will be there. So if you're in town, come check us out.
There it is, man. So yeah, man. Jay, thanks for coming on the Working Artist Project.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Go later. If you like what you heard, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. The Working Artist Project is brought to you by Second Line Arts Collective. Find out more at secondlinearts.org. I'm Darian Douglas, and this is the Working Artist Project.